Today we will be installing an overhead closer kit in a 4-inch square door rail. So once you have opened up your overhead closer arm kit, a couple of the key components in this kit are your adjuster block, the adjuster screw, shim washers, PVPL, and the overhead closer arm. So with all these parts laid out, the next step is to assemble the sub-assembly. So first we will take the adjustment screw and we will place the two shim washers supplied onto the adjustment screw. We will then fit this adjustment screw into the adjuster block. If having two of the shim washers makes the adjuster screw not fit into the block, just remove one of them and now place that in the block, and then we will just turn the PVPL onto this fastener. One thing we want to be sure of whenever tightening this on is that there are two ridges along the PVPL. There is a thin ridge and a little bit thicker ridge. We want this thicker ridge facing the bottom of the adjuster block. So now we'll be installing this sub-assembly into the door rail. The first step is to remove the end cap from the door rail on the pivot side. So we will use a Phillips screwdriver to remove the end cap screw and the end cap. We will then take this small sub-assembly and slide it into the base of the rail. And we will want to line up the two holes through the adjuster block with the two threaded holes in the base of the rail. Once aligned, we will then use 832 fasteners that are applied to fasten the block to the rail. We will be applying a thread locker to each 832 fastener and using a 3/32 Allen key, tightening down each fastener. So once the sub-assembly is installed in the door rail, we will want to take a measurement of the gap between the adjuster block and the PVPL. That gap should be approximately 1/4 of an inch. With a 1/4 of an inch gap, that gives the pivot center line 2 5/8 of an inch from the end of the end cap. If you are not at 1/4 of an inch, you can use a 3/16 Allen key, and turning the adjuster screw, turning it clockwise will move the pivot center line closer to the end cap, and then turning it counterclockwise will move the pivot center line further away from the end cap. So once the pivot center line and that gap have been correct, we will want to apply the 1/4-20 pusher screw into the threaded hole in the base of the door rail. Now there is no Loctite that needs applied to this pusher screw, as it already has pre-applied thread locker. So we will use a 3/16 Allen key and just start this fastener into the door rail. We don't want to over tighten this fastener because they will do that whenever they tighten all the pusher screws when it is applied to the glass. The last step is to then just reinstall your end cap onto the rail using a Phillips screwdriver. So what's left in this kit and not installed is the overhead closer arm. This closer arm will be applied in the field once the door rail is placed on the glass. Due to the fact that they need to gain access to each of the pusher screws to tighten the door rail onto the glass.